Nearly one half of small businesses close their doors within 6 months of a cyber attack. 6 months. Gone. And the people doing this, they're not lone wolves in hoodies. They're organized. They have HR departments. They have shift changes. They have middle management. They run like a Fortune 500 company, except their product is your destruction. So here's a question. Who's actually fighting back for the small guys? Because the big guys, they have armies. Your neighborhood dentist, your local accountant, they have a prayer, and a prayer is not a security strategy. 99% of businesses out there are basically showing up to a knife fight with a strongly worded email. My guest today went from Cisco, from Verizon, from the biggest names in the game, employee number 19 at a company that decided the little guys deserve the same protection as the Fortune 500. And now that company, Huntress, is changing everything. The attackers already know your name. The question is whether your defender does. This is Cybercrime Junkies. Let's get into it. Welcome, everybody. I am your host, David Dean Morrow, and I am here with Jeremy Young, one of the leaders at Huntress Security. Jeremy, welcome to the studio, sir.
Thank you, David. Very nice to be here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I like your setup. It's very cool.
This is not a brick wall. It is actually something taped to the wall that I got on Amazon, but it looks nice.
It looks like you are like in the like you stepped out of a scene from a movie. It's very cool. I like it.
The funniest is when people ask me if I'm like done with my 15-minute set at the comedy club, which is
exactly.
I think also on point.
Yeah, exactly. I was just gonna, I killed it tonight. It was really good. It's 2:00 in the morning.
We'll see.
Took some food off a thing that was in the hotel lobby. This is what we do as stand-up comics.
It's just me and you, but maybe we can get some crowd work in by the end.
Absolutely. So really interesting career path you've had. I want to talk to you about leadership and some of your experiences. You had Fortune 500 experience, Hewlett Packard, Verizon, Duo, Cisco. Those are blue chip places that you have been at, and you became employee number 19 at Huntress, which is really pretty cool. Like that is really fun.
It's worked out pretty well.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, man. So let me ask you this, like, first, what made you take the leap to join something so small at the time?
So the Duo to Cisco was through acquisition. So the rest of them joined HP, but even going back to that time, and that was my first foray into tech, it was still kind of a startup within HP. The business, it was a startup called HP Direct, which they were trying to compete with Dell at the time. Oh. And so they got some leaders from Dell to come over and like show us how you do it.
Right.
And created this small little business, just direct business inside of HP. So it was still kind of a startup because it was something they had never done. So
within the bigger ecosystem.
And a great way to learn all the things to do in the channel is to do all the wrong things in the channel. Your first foray into technology, because it was the people from Dell teaching a channel company how to not work in the channel. And then it became fulfillment neutral. Then it became channel first. So like we went through all these iterations, but what it did teach us is like, if we show up, we will win. You can't just outsource all of the sales and all of everything to the channel, especially in that type of commoditized market where they could be running a spiff for anything that day. But then Verizon was a move that was very much kind of proximity. I'd moved up to Philadelphia as a field role for HP, and Verizon was very big in that area, and then ended up being 5 years on the wireline side there. And man, if I had that algorithm of giving you just enough money every year to not leave a big Fortune 500, they've got that down. But then by the time that was done, I was actually looking to go smaller. And so I wanted to get more into the startup feel. And that's how I found Duo. And I would talking to all my trusted customers at Verizon, like broadband was coming in, commoditizing and really lowering the barrier to entry for customers to get there. We didn't we didn't need MPLS anymore. Now we just need reliable access to the internet. So everything was moving to the application layer. And so I
Right.
took that as and Verizon is still a big security company. And so that was a piece of it that always interested me. And between those two things, the kind of me seeing everybody move to the application layer and a specific interest in security. I lived in Austin, Texas at the time, and Duo had a pretty big Austin office. It was the second largest office, and found my way onto their company, but also specifically onto the MSP team. And I had been working with MSPs and been working with the channel generally for a long time. And this was the first time that we built a program specifically for MSPs. And with all of my background up to that point, MSPs have to be specialists at everything. They
Right.
talk all tech. They are the technologists. And given my background of having endpoint, printer, server, all the HP stuff, and then the network layer, and I found that I got along with these technologists very well because I spoke their language, and then helping them understand the security side of it that in 2016 was still a very kind of new topic to most MSPs. It worked out really well. And then Cisco bought them, stayed there long enough to put guardrails on, but I wanted to go small again because I went to Duo to get myself out of like the corporate America, very
Right.
huge company. So I already had kind of my taxi light on, and I had met the Huntress founders through the MSP event world. And little known interesting tidbit, Duo and maybe 2016, early 2017 ish was doing due diligence on Huntress to maybe buy them as their endpoint, which
Oh,
they
interesting.
ultimately didn't buy anybody. They built their own, but
Right.
they were that was an initial connection of Kyle came over to our booth at DattoCon, just kind of introduced himself. We didn't know any of that. He did, of
Right.
course. And I was like, why is the CEO of Huntress over here talking to us? I later
Right.
learned all the rest of that to put two and two together, but that's how we first met. And then we just started hanging out at the events. And then he kind of had his eye on me and was not so low key recruiting me to come over. And so after close to maybe a year of knowing that team, and then Andrew Kaiser, who is my kind of consigliere at Cisco, because he came to Cisco through acquisition as well through OpenDNS, and he helped me and our team put some of the guardrails on the MSP program. So the same thing wouldn't happen to the Duo MSP program that did happen to OpenDNS after acquisition. He moved over to Huntress as one of their first sales leaders, and then he helped bring me over maybe 6 months to a year after, along with Kyle, Chris, and John. And that's how I originally got over there. But it was the first time I was at a company at that earliest stage, because even Duo I was maybe 300 something employees. So
Yeah.
it was a successful startup by that point. And so it was going on a limb, but I fully believed in what they were doing. And the founders were and still are some of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. So
Well, they absolutely are. And the mission is just brilliant, right? Like just bringing cybersecurity to the 99%. Like it says it all. Like, and you guys really execute on that. And we as a MSSP and an MSP, we help deliver that. And I love being able to talk to a very small organization and explaining to them the security controls that they need and why they need it, right? And they're on board, but usually it's cost prohibitive, or if it's too inexpensive, it's not very good. And Huntress solves both of those. Like it is just a remarkable organization. So great,
it's
great job, dude.
the
Like
thank
it's really fantastic.
the scale has really come from behind the mission. Like
Hmm.
anybody can create a pretty cool product,
Right.
but if your mission is focused on being the best widget, then
Right.
the best case scenario, you make the best widget. Having the mission, really, our mission is to protect your mission at the end of the day. And that expands wherever attackers go. And so that's why you've
Yep.
seen our platform expand over time, but always within the back of our minds, we're trying, we can't do that if we're not priced affordably and we're not making products that people want to use. So having that mission in mind first is really what's driven the success for everything else at Huntress.
Absolutely. So tell me about your leadership experience. So coming from larger organizations, it would seem, because I've worked at 14,000 employee organizations, I've worked at 20 employee organizations, where, like, I imagine that when you left where you were at and you joined Huntress, that your leadership experience changed dramatically. Like, what can you share about it? Like, what kind of things did you learn as a leader at Huntress, and not particularly at Huntress, but at a smaller organization that you just didn't get the chance to experience at a larger organization?
There was actually a lot more proximity, or not proximity, but there's a lot more that I brought with me that made sense than I thought there was going to be. Because so I'm not sure how many Cisco has, but that there are hundreds of thousands of employees globally.
Yeah, huge.
And
right.
Once an organization gets so large, to be a top performer at that organization, a lot of it is going to rest on you as an individual. And even whether you're at an IC role or you're at a manager role, it comes down to your personality and how you attack your day to day. And because a lot of times you're on an island, they don't have
Right.
they don't have all the support. It's a ginormous organization, so the things exist, but it's on you to find them, and it's on you to turn them into what you're going to do. And that actually is very relevant at a much smaller organization, with the difference being that some of the things don't exist. But that doesn't have to be a bug. That can be a feature, because then you get to create things that make sense. Because the bigger an organization gets, depending, you can get away from your customer and you get silos. And so you start making things that like aren't relevant. So a lot of times that I would find something, a one pager or whatever, an explainer video, and then I would edit it to make it my own, because we're the ones actually talking to people and hearing what their needs are, and let's edit that to make it so I would never let the lack of a resource or just take something off the shelf and assume it was going to resonate. And then going to a smaller company, both smaller companies at Duo and then at Huntress, where the product did great things. And so you have a product that works. That's easy. Coming from Verizon wireline, where nobody wants to talk to you about any of the things. Telecom is kind of a necessary evil.
Right.
And so I'm like, and half the time you deliver stuff and they're like, it doesn't work and you're billing it incorrectly. So going to places where the products just works, like, come on, that's cake. Right. Now we just have to properly explain what it does, how it works, how it's priced. But a lot of what I also found is that something big companies do pretty well is process and documentation.
I was just about to say process and like templates, documentation, systems. Yeah.
And so I did that part of my brain, got a lot of muscle memory, and then coming into smaller organizations where they were doing things that worked.
Right, but they didn't have it documented, right?
There was no repeatability.
No process. Right, it wasn't scalable, and you want to be scalable when you're smaller.
Right, so you bring somebody on. Exactly, you bring somebody on, and it's like you sitting there training them one step at a time, showing them how to do something in some tool, and I'm like, where's the document that just read this and do it? And so both at Duo and at Huntress, in the early days, a lot of content creation, but also
guides are created. Yeah, guides, step guides, things like that, right?
Exactly. Process documentation, and then getting collaboration from all these people of here's what I think it should be. Give me your input. And then that becomes a thing. And then but it's very fun in that there, regardless of the size of company you are, there's always problems to solve. And I'm going to generalize and say there's kind of two types of people in the world. There's the ones that are at work and see a problem and they're like, that sucks, not my job. And then there are types of people who are like,
Yes.
that sucks, let's fix it.
Right.
And I'm one of the let's fix it people. And so I've always throughout my career
I'm
gotten
glad you said that aloud because because people are so hesitant today. I'm older, so like I'm not afraid to offend people. Like, and it might get me in trouble, but it also makes things happen, right? And you're absolutely right. The delineation, because I've worked with so many different types of organizations, and I've found there really only are those two types of people, because it doesn't matter what the challenge is. You can either like you're either with a group that is like, okay, it's a challenge, like it's not about finger pointing, it's about how do we resolve this, like how do we sort it, how do we identify it, how do we make sure it doesn't happen again, and come up. And oftentimes the fix can be found. It can be, a lot of times there's just a process that needs to be done, right? Like there's all these things, and just developing that's really good. I think there's nothing more frustrating as a leader, though, when you have people on your team and you don't know that. It's hard, it's hard to determine that in hiring, right? Sometimes you don't know until a new challenge comes up and they're on the team. But when you're with a person or a group that is like, well, not our problem, or above our pay grade, or some phrase like that, and you're like, dude, it's everybody's pay grade. And that's one of the benefits I've always seen at smaller organizations, because you don't have the luxury of just shipping it off to a different department, right? Like, you've got to figure it out. It's only you guys.
Every problem at a startup of that size is a people problem, and that we don't have enough people to solve all the problems. So like you just got to do it and get it out of the way. And one of the things about being specifically at a tech startup, not all industries do this, but you get the option to buy shares and like earn them and then buy them, which means that whenever you're outside of your like quote unquote lane, and people are like, why are you involved in this? Like, I am here to increase all of our shareholder value.
Right. Exactly.
There's not really a remit on that.
Right.
Like, I know my title may say one thing, but I'm here to increase shareholder value. This is a problem we need to solve. In order to do that, I'm going to help do that. And I love, and that gives you that ownership mentality, or it can give you. The idea is for it to give you that ownership mentality. And that resonates with me, and it helps me have a bigger vision than what my remit might say. And it allows me to go solve problems that otherwise I might maybe some would argue shouldn't be involved in. But so you say you're not afraid to offend people. I wouldn't even call it offending. It's there's a couple books like Clear is Kind.
Right.
And so
yeah, that's what I meant. Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly what
communicating
I mean.
clearly.
If the intent is good, I'm sorry if I'm going to offend you, because we're trying to solve something for the betterment of all of us, right?
Well, and in tech, there's a lot, like Duo had a mantra of being kinder than necessary, which I loved and I agree with, but that doesn't mean like saving people's feelings along the way, because, and I never try to offend anybody, but I am going to say like the obvious thing out loud. Right. And there's so much, people hold so much back for I'm not even sure what it all is, but yeah, there's a lot of reasons, but
fear of rejection, fear of just fear in general. Like, and I think, Simon Sinek talked about that in one of his speeches or one of his discussions. He talks about, he's the guy who's not afraid of being an idiot in the room. Like, just be like, because people start talking about something and you can tell in the room there are different groups making different assumptions, and he will just ask the obvious question. He's like, so what we're saying is this and this and this. And then you'll see somebody on the other side go, oh no, I was assuming it was going this way. And someone else will be like, no, I was assuming it was going this way. And it just, by asking something very obvious and very just like simplifying it down, it really changes the trajectory of the conversation, because it really gets to the meat of it.
I don't want anybody to confuse being kind with the need for all of us to get along all the time.
Right.
Because at work, you need to be able to have difficult conversations in order to get to outcomes and get past things.
Exactly. And maintain respect, right? Because it's not about the person, it's about the idea. Like
Exactly.
we're just focusing on the idea. Like, I'm not sure that idea will result in what you believe it's going to result in. And here's the reasoning. And just having and hashing it out, and that's a really good point, because
we've lost a lot of that.
Yeah,
I think Zoom had, I think a lot of the virtual, I've been remote since like 2012. So
yeah, it's been a long time. Yeah.
But post COVID, when Huntress has always been remote first and remote only, but I still get to travel a lot. So I still get a lot of human interaction. But many people, it is harder to have difficult conversations in this format because you lose the human element and you don't get to read the room. You don't get to read body language the same way you do when you're actually in person. So it has led to more like, we all need to get along and like, hey, that wasn't. And it's like, we can still have difficult conversations and be respectful and get to better outcomes faster, versus we get off the meeting and then we go call the one person in the meeting that we liked and we complain. Right. Like, no, let's just have the discussion live in the room, and that will get you to better outcomes faster. And conflict creates better, closer relationships than just smiling to your face and then complaining about it after you get off the phone. So clear is kind, radical candor. Like you can still be kind and get through difficult things together.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you this. What was one of the first leaders or books or leadership ideas or people or TED Talks, or what was some of the first people that you started to follow or you started to find yourself emulating or identifying with?
Going back to HP days, there was a leader who I eventually reported to for some time named Michael Dean, and he went out of his way to take all of his direct reports, which that time maybe there was like 20 or 30 of us, or secondary reports as well, put us in a room and take us through a presentation he created that is specifically about career path and career advice. And the long story short is that he started out as a individual contributor, like SDR, cold calling person at Dell, became a sales rep, became a field sales rep, became a field sales rep manager. I think I might have skipped a manager in there, but moved straight up the chain to being sales director. And then when he got into he's like, okay, guys, I'm ready to be VP. And they all like laughed him out of the room. They're like, you don't have any operations experience. You don't have any finance experience. You don't have any customer support, like all of the other things that you need once you get up to a higher level. And he's like, I've been here my entire career. Why didn't you tell me this? And they're like, it's not our responsibility to tell you what you need to do to get to a role that you never told us you want to be in. And so his main point was, it's not your company's responsibility. It's not your mom's responsibility. It's not your mentor's responsibility. Your career path is your responsibility. And to get to where you want to go, first you have to understand where you want to go. And then you have to proactively outreach to gather the information of what your career path will need to be in order to get there. And don't expect that just because you work at a Fortune 100 company, they're going to guide you on the right path. You have to take ownership of that. And that has always stuck with me. And I've shared that. And if I distilled it down, if something is to be, it's going to be me. Like, it's going to happen because I'm making it happen, not because I'm just letting something happen to me. You have to be in the driver's seat of your own career.
That's really good. That's really good. I mean, and
that's why it stuck with me.
Well, yeah. And when you hear it, it's so logical, because if you envision yourself being in that role, right? Well, look at the things that role needs to know about, right? They are, in the VP role that you just mentioned, right? Well, they have had operations experience, engineering experience. Like there's a whole bunch of, it's not just the one department, trajectory. Right. And so you can see that you would need to do cross training and move departments and learn about all the aspects of the role in order to lead 3 different types of departments or 4 different types. Really interesting.
Well, and Dell was famous. They're here in Austin. Round Rock technically, but they were very good at getting young talent out of UT and then getting them integrated and getting them up. And that was his story. And so that was really his first job. And if you think about putting yourself in that shoes of like, you assume the company is doing the right thing for you. Like you're
Right.
getting promoted. This is great. I'm going to keep getting promoted forever.
Right.
And if you don't take it upon yourself to ask more qualifying questions around where you're going and where you ultimately want to be, you can find yourself siloed into kind of a glass ceiling type situation where you're going to have to then go backwards to get the experience you need to break through.
What other kind of mistakes or lessons do you see that leaders learn as they move up?
One that I made when I first became a manager at HP, I became a manager and moved like physically from New Mexico to Texas to take over a team. And I wanted to coach everybody up. Everybody was savable. I just needed to get involved and we're going to make everybody better. And what I learned from that experience is like, sometimes a car needs an oil change and sometimes it needs a new engine. And if it needs a new engine, it's probably totaled and maybe it's time to move on faster. And so we ultimately got to the right place. But what I learned from that is when if there's an existing team or if sometimes people are, it's not necessarily anything wrong with that person. It just might be the wrong role. And so you can, if you approach it around like on a whole 360 view of that person, you don't have, the answer doesn't have to be, you're fired, I'm replacing you. It's like, what would the right role be? Let's help you get there. And sometimes it's off to a new company and out, but you can still do that in a transparent way with respect and help that person get to whatever the next thing is, while understanding you're doing the best thing for the company by finding somebody right for this role. And you can also have right person, wrong stage. So at a startup,
yeah, that's a really good that's a really good take on it, because I think Jim Collins talks about seats on the bus, right? Like getting everybody in the right seat on the bus. And sometimes, like you mentioned, some people just don't belong on the bus. Your bus might not be designed for them. They might fit very well on a different bus, right? There might be a great seat for them, but maybe not yours. But the point is everybody's got to be there. But what you just said, and I want to turn it back to you, is it might not be the right timing, right? Like especially at a startup.
There are different stages of a startup, and it's not linear.
Correct.
Sometimes it goes in a very odd motion, but you can have the most perfect marketing candidate who's been a CMO 4 times in a row. They probably shouldn't be employee 20 because you're not ready for a CMO, right? And so a lot of startups make this mistake a lot of assuming that somebody's resume and how their amazing experience is going to translate to you at that stage. And if they're not a builder and you need them to build things, and if they're not a doer, they're more of a manager and orchestrator, and you're hiring them at a stage where you're expecting somebody to do, it's probably not going to turn out well. And so making sure that it can be the right person, but the wrong time. And so make sure both of those things are aligned.
Yeah, absolutely. And, have you seen, sometimes when people that have had great success at larger organizations, they go to a smaller organization and they struggle with the lack of process, the lack of having a team doing things. And in smaller organizations, I've always found you have to be able to get in there and roll up the sleeves and actually execute and do it. Right? It can't be above you. It can't be like, oh, well, where I came from, I had this team that would do that part, but I want to do this. It's like, no, when you're at a smaller place, there is no team. Like, you've got to do all of these things. Have you seen that? Or was that your experience as well? Something like that?
Very much so. I'm very much a doer, and I am, my wife would tell you that, like, she's like, may everybody be blessed with your confidence. And I'll figure it out.
Yes, exactly.
I'm assuming that I will be able to figure something out. And so I'll just go and try and do it. And sometimes I'll fail, and that's okay too. But
right,
I will try to fail fast.
That's just version 1.
Right.
That's just the minimum viable product of the app, right? We're on version 12 by the time I get it right.
Exactly. But trying to bring somebody in who is usually second level manager or above, and then going down to first level manager on a small team.
Right.
Exactly what you just said. There are people that are really great at managing people, really great at strategy, and really great at like the politics of an organization and be able to get the resources that their teams need and get that aren't going to write an email, aren't going to make a sales call, that aren't going to. So you got to make sure that you are hiring the right profile, not just the resume. That 3 5 years from now, that person might be perfect for your organization, but right now they're going to be in a lot of meetings and say a lot of really intellectual things that make a lot of sense, and then you're going to wonder why the qualified opportunities aren't going up.
Absolutely. What's been your experience in mentoring? You talked about somebody that you had as a mentor. How about you mentoring others?
A lot of that comes from like I love when people kind of put their hand up. Like I'll
Mm-hmm.
and ask for more, and then I'll dig in, because everybody knows I'm very transparent. So I'll always give feedback where asked for, and sometimes we're not asked for.
Yes.
But when people say like, hey, how, so I returned to Huntress in January of 2025. And then, so it was about a year ago now, May, and DattoCon, and this was DattoCon Ireland. One of the younger Huntress reps came up and, how do I be you? And no one had ever said that to me in that way before.
Yeah.
And I was like, in what way? And like community and I was like, okay, yeah. And we've been meeting regularly ever since, and she's on the community team now. And so it's when a lot of that, and that tracks with my experience of gathering mentors. It's, in my opinion, the onus is on the mentee to identify and find the people that they want to
Emulate.
emulate and gain experience from. But I try to the door is always open. I'm always listening for that, and would love when that works out, and that I get to help others and bring others along the way.
Yeah. I've been told by some people in leadership sometimes that one of their frustrations in mentorship, and I was just curious if you've had this experience, is when people reach out and it's almost like they're just going through the process. Like they think it's cool to want to be to have a mentor, so they'll ask them to be a mentor, but then they never follow any of the advice or execute on any of the things that they get from them. And they're like, why did you even bother to do it? It's something that I hear kind of often. And it's, I guess my question to you is, have you seen that happen? And then why do you think that happens?
For sure. I always have, I give homework. So if you come to me with any of that type, or if this is probably the most often way this comes in, is somebody in my network is like, hey, there's a job opening here. How would you recommend me? And I'll send them a booking link on my calendar. Let's have a conversation. So that's step one. Do they actually book the meeting? And then if we get on the meeting, I'm like, here's what I want you to do. Read this, watch this, do these things, and then book another meeting. And do they get that far? And I'm using the job as an example, but same sort of thing for mentorship. Beginning that process of like, are you going to do the things that I'm asking to do? And a lot of them will just kind of naturally fall off and not do the things. And then I just keep moving and I'm not worried about it. But the ones who do the simple things that I ask, that really aren't, I'm not giving them 10 hours of work. It's usually probably an hour or two.
Yeah.
And keep coming back, then they're like, they're in the crew. And yes, you're going to get recommended for the job. And then I'm going to keep helping you. And when you ask for it and follow through. But if you just ask for a mentorship, but you're not willing to do any of the work, like you'll find your way somewhere. It won't be with me, but
I'm always, I've always, because that's happened to me where somebody's like formally asked me to mentor them, which is, I think is kind of odd, because I'm like, why don't you just ask for the help rather than ask me to be a person in your mind as a helper? Like, it's kind of weird because it's not like a new title, right? But but then they don't like do any of the things that you recommend, and then they make the mistakes they were going to make anyway. And I'm like, why did you waste my time? Like, I don't understand that. And I love that you give a little homework. I love that you, and because it's about building trust, isn't it? Like, trust is a feeling. It's not it's not a destination. It is something that you establish over time of being reliable, of being authentic, doing what you say, honesty, things like that. And
well, those are kind of personality tests and litmus tests of just,
yeah, they really are, aren't they?
And they are kind of toll stops to, are you going to get off or are you going to keep going? And there is a price to this. You do have to do the work, but because you're asking me to do work for you. So it's a two-way street.
Yeah, exactly. Because usually when you're asking for a mentor, they're busy. Like the people you're asking to be your mentor, those people are in leadership and they're busy. And so you're asking for their most precious asset, and that's their time. And, respect that and do it, right? Because you can save yourself so much time and so much anguish if you just follow it. They've literally walked in the path that you're heading.
Well, right. And I'm not going to give the same advice 3 or 4 times in a row and then still give you time. Like, yeah. Are you making the changes? Right. Are you adopting the mantras? And when I see that, love it. Let's keep going, and we'll do more. But there are people that kind of self-select out of the process when they just
it's a very PC way of saying it. I love that phrase. I think I'm going to steal it from you. Self-select out of the process. I like that. See, I learned something today. That's really good. I like that.
It's still May, so do or do not. There is no try, right?
Yes, that is very, very good. I love it. Self-select out of the process. That's great. So let me ask you, over the years, you have changed, I'm sure, in your leadership style and your own approach to people. What things have you kind of started to do or stopped doing over the years? Like, are there any habits or any, processes that you follow today that it'd be hard to manage somebody if they were doing that used to do 10 years ago?
I'm getting into just kind of psychology for a second. So I'm a second born, I'm a youngest, and I was growing up very like thinking and feeling first. And so mostly through the work side of my life, I had to train some of that out of me.
Yeah.
Younger siblings are usually much more easygoing, much more let's just follow whatever oldest wants, that kind of thing. And which I still am, I would like to think, fairly easygoing in the life side of my work-life balance. But at work, had to learn to trust my instincts and opinion and path, and also not take things personally and separate those two things of being able to have, like we talked about earlier, being able to have conflict and that be okay. And so kind of not seek it out, but not shy from it. And also, so going back to HP days and Michael Dean, this was 20, I'm going to say 13 or 2014, somewhere in there. And there was huge floods in Thailand, and Thailand is where all hard drives in the world come from, which is, I learned that summer. And so no one globally could ship a computer that wasn't already on the shelf because all the factories that built
were all flooded.
And
I didn't even know that. So
it was a long time ago.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
But customers were irate. And so he was on a call with me, and he would be saying these crazy things. And in my mind, like, customer's always right. Let's try to soothe and hear him out. And he kind of came in on I remember a specific call of like, hey, now wait a minute. Like, this is a global problem. This is not HP lied to you and now you don't have your laptops.
Or
and we've
sales overpromised and now they're under delivering or anything like that.
And we also have these laptops on the shelf that we could ship you right now, and you've said no. So why are you still yelling about this? And we got off the phone. He's like, just because someone has a title that's bigger than you don't assume that they're smarter than you, and don't assume that you have to like bow down to that title. You know what your business is, you know what you're about, and you need to be able to respectfully hold people accountable, whatever the role is. And that was another
That's really good
clear
advice.
Yeah.
Really good advice. And you know, that ties into from any job title, right? Like I've had people on my team that are clear leaders and other people have bigger titles than them and they're not leading the group, right? And I'm always impressed by organizations when they will listen and follow the better advice, right? Or the better idea. Because to me, that's what should govern. If it is a better idea, go with the idea. It doesn't matter that a junior person came up with the idea. Like, put the ego aside and let's go with the better idea.
Well, and there are so many situations, especially in our world.
Oh yeah, ego gets in the way. Like ego and like you're dealing with the person's parent issues and all this. Like you're like, seriously, like, can you please listen to the better idea, right? Like you have to.
Well, in small business world, so many businesses are started and owned by people that didn't do business before, and they've built a successful business, and that's great, but their scope is, their breadth of experience is narrow to that one thing. And so they would, a business owner or a CEO of a business shows up, and if they want to, I will respect everyone the exact same way, but respect is both, I will give it freely, but then it gets earned. And your behavior, and going back to Verizon, so I was a global account manager, and a data center is out in China, and some CIO of some company would be calling me, and I'd be answering the phone in the middle of the night, and they'd be yelling, and I'd be like, Scott, I'm going to hang up now. And when you calm down and you want to have a respectful conversation, call me back.
That's fantastic.
And I'd hang up the phone, and that would happen a couple more times usually. And then on like the third time, he'd be calmed down and be like, okay, I'm ready to have a conversation. I'm like, okay, great. Let's talk about what we can do to help you out.
Right. Because like what, because at the end of the day too, like what did Jeremy in Austin do to cause this? Like it's a global issue.
I'm a human.
Like,
I'm the only
like
person on the other end of the phone that's going to help you.
Like, right. I'm there to help. Like why?
Maybe treat me
like
how you'd like to be treated.
Yeah. It's like people that are like screaming at the waitress because the soup is bad. I'm like, she didn't just whip up the soup. Like she's just bringing it, or he's just bringing it to you. Like don't yell at them. Like,
yes,
I don't get that.
Try to remember to be human first and keep titles out of it.
I'm like, let's just, you're shooting the messenger. Like it's not going to change anything. Just save your breath. Move on. Don't go back to the restaurant. Like whatever practical way you can solve it. That's fantastic.
The easiest way to get me out of your Slack thread, out of your business, out of whatever is
your Slack thread
or Teams thread, whatever, is to just give me the information that I'm looking for and showing me that like you've got this, and then I'll be like, okay, cool. I'm never entering into somebody else's lane to try and like for the fun of it. Right. It's to make sure things are happening the right way. And when you tell me they're happening the right way, like, and that's both internal and external. And so if you have a great salient point, I don't care if it's coming from the CEO or from an individual contributor, like, yep, point conceded. Let me go work on trying to solve that, versus it doesn't need to have the owner to hop on to make a good point.
Right. Well, hey man, thank you so much. I really appreciate the insight. I think this is a really good eye-opening discussion on
very fun conversation. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, fantastic. So we will have links to your content. We encourage everybody to follow you on LinkedIn as well. And obviously we'll have links to Huntress. So thank you so much, Jeremy Young. Great job, my friend.
Thank you, sir.